Welcome back. In the previous step, we created the delete service, we executed it, and in this step, let's focus on the UI part, on the front end part. We would want to be able to call the delete from the UI. How can we do that? The first thing which we need to do is we need to enhance the to-do list component. So let's go to the HTML, and what we want to do is we would want to add a header called actions. So we would want to be able to invoke the delete. So let's add our actions and let's add td, and let's say over here button, and on click of this button we'll call a method called delete to do, and let's say delete to do. Let's see how this looks in the UI. Cool, this is how it looks. And let's add a class is equal to button and button warning. Let's see how this looks. This is how our delete looks. We don't really need to say delete to do because it's almost inherent that you are deleting to do. So let's just have delete in here. And now we need to define the delete to do method. Where do we need to do that? List to do's component.ts. Let's go ahead and delete it, define it in here. Over here, let's add a delete to do method and console.log delete to do. Now let's go to the console and do an inspect so that we can go to the console. Invest this a little. Yep, this is cool. And now when I do delete, you can see delete to do being printed. One of the important things that I would need to be able to identify is which to do is being deleted. The ID of the to do being deleted. That's very, very important. How do I send the ID of the to do to be deleted? All that I need to do is to say to do.id, because there's a variable called to do which is already defined in here, and all that I need to do is say to do.id. Save this. Now I can pass the ID in here. So I'll say ID and delete to do, and let's change it to ticks so that we can actually print a variable name. So delete to do and dollar. So we can print the value of the ID in here. Let's save this and let's go to the to-dos page and see what would happen. Let's click delete. Okay, delete to do 1, delete to do 2, delete to do 3. That's cool. So now we are able to execute the delete method on the right to do. But this is just the UI part. We would actually need to call this service. So we need to enhance the to do data service so that we can call the to do service, right? So let's create that method. So delete to do. The delete to do method accepts two parameters, right? Username, comma, the ID to be deleted. So let's pass in those two parameters. What we'll do is do something similar to what we see for the get method. So this .http .delete. So that's the only difference. So this is going to call the delete method. And what is the URL that you would want to call? Let's use the same ticks. And the URL which we would want to call, let's copy it from the RESTlet client because that was a successful execution for us. Let's take it from here. So users, instead of this, it should be dollar username, and instead of to do's 1, we need to send in ID, dollar ID. This dollar is very, very important. Make sure that you have a dollar in both these places. So the syntax is this, and you'd see that it's highlighted. So if I'm making use of the variable in this string, then you'd see that it's highlighted. Now let's go to the list to do component and enhance this. So what we want to do in here is we would want to say this dot to do service dot delete to do, and what are the parameters? Username is the first one. Let's continue hard coding it to in 28 minutes. And what we want to do, the ID is the ID of the to do. We need to do a subscribe which would delete it. Now what should we do when we delete the to do? If the successful response comes back, what should we do? Let's define this right now. So let's do a console.log of response so that we can see what is the response, and ideally you would show a message to the user saying delete to do has been successful. So what I'll do is I'll create a simple message. Let's say it's a string, and over here in the list to do's component.html below the header, just like in the login page. We did this already, login.component.html. We have a alert warning in here. So let's do something very similar in here. So what we are doing is alert, we'll say alert success. It's not a warning one. And if condition would change a little here, because we are looking for the message. So if the message exists, show the message. And over here in the list to do's component, let's go ahead and say console.log, and this dot message is equal to delete successful. You can also include the ID in, so I'll say tick, so that you can actually say delete of to do dollar open brace ID successful. Let's see what would happen now. Let's go back to our UI. Now we have the delete. Let's clear out the console. Let's clear out the network tab, and let's click delete. You can see that it says delete of to do one successful. That's cool. But one of the things you would see in here is the fact that we are still seeing 3 to do's. We'll focus on it a little later, but for now let's look at the console. So it says delete to do one. It's printing a response of null. That's okay. And if I expand this further to see the network tab, you would see that there is a response of 204 coming in, which is no content. So localhost 8080 users in 28 minutes to do /1 delete. That's cool. So this is all good. And if you go and execute the to do's thing, you'd see that the ID 1 is deleted. That's perfect. So we are able to delete the to do. The only thing I don't really like right now is the fact that we are still seeing the complete list of to do's. Why is it so? Because we have not really refreshed the to do's list. If you see that, if I actually click to do's again, or actually go to home and come back to to-do so that to-dos are refreshed again, you'd see that the to-do is actually deleted. So how do we refresh the to-dos once they are deleted? One of the ways would be to directly call this method again. So I can copy this code and call this again inside the response. Once the response comes back, I can refresh all the to-dos. But that would be too much because we would be duplicating a lot of code. So what I'll do is I'll refactor this to an external method. So what I'll do is I'll take this logic and actually move it to a method. Instead of ng on it, let's create a method called refresh to do's, and I'll put the logic in there. And what we'll do is on ng init, let's call refresh to do's, and we can do the same thing when we actually do this in the to do. One of the things you can actually do is actually try and play with the to do's and delete the specific ID from the to-dos list which is present on the client side. I would not recommend, because you'd always want to reflect what data is on your server as much as possible. Unless you have a huge performance issue, I think invoking the service again and getting the data again is the better option. Let's look at the thing again. To-dos are loaded. You have 2 to-dos. I click delete. The delete is successful. Cool, isn't it? In the last few steps, we focus on implementing the delete action. And we have update and the add new to do actions remaining. In the next steps, let's create the update and the add to do actions. I'll see you in the next step. Until then, bye bye.